Hey, all you Critical Role fans, and welcome back to another episode of Crit Happens, the recap slash rambling slash geeky time, whatever you want to call it, with me, Mikey, the Replay Archivist. So, if you are brand new here, well, welcome. I'm glad, however, you found me through the algorithm, through the previous installments of this series, or you're just a big fan of Critical Role and you want to be able to have a powwow with some other fans, then welcome. I am going to be recapping episode 5, Branching Paths, from the replay this past week. So, the reason that I give myself the moniker of the Replay Archivist is because I will be watching the Monday VOD on replay. And because of my job as an educator, I don't have a lot of free time. But the weekends are here, and that's what they're there for. So, I will always be about a week behind. For those of you who watch the live episodes on Thursdays, I watch the VODs on Mondays on the weekend so I can have time to digest and to write these scripts and be able to do this. But I'm excited because this episode was not as crazy as the last 4 episodes that we've gotten here at, Campaign 4 of Critical Role. So, without further ado, I'm going to do a bit of a recap of this episode, and then I'm going to give my thoughts and my feelings, interjecting ever so often, and even towards the end, which makes me super excited. So, let's just dive into everything. The episode opens up with the soldiers table, which includes, Wick, Tyranny, Thimble, and Cadigan. So what ends up happening here is that in the darkness of the Dvalmar Pass, I believe Brennan called it. I have my notes, y'all. I'm trying to do my best. We see everybody on horseback, in a fairy and flight and a wolf at their side. So everybody in the soldiers group is fleeing Dol-Makjar in search of Casimir Gavendale, the man who betrayed Thjazi Fang. And we kind of get how all the characters are feeling leaving the city and heading on to their own ventures. So we hear from Thimble as she is sharpening her focus on the purpose of revenge. And she's using it as a shield against the grief of, Thjazi's death. Teor thinks of Casimir, once a friend, and his brother Sid, realizing how little he truly knows about him and fearing what danger awaits this group. Meanwhile, Wick watches the fading lights of his home, the Villa Aurora, clinging to Tyranny's tail with the hope that the truth will carve a clearer path ahead. Tyranny is discovering the harsh difference between the wilds and the comforts of the villa, questioning whether righteousness is truly rewarded. And then Cadigan, meanwhile, feels alive. He's in his element. He's returning to the wilderness and to Timony, getting what we're going to, setting up the prelude, so to speak, for the soldiers' table. But before we get into that, we cut back to all the other teams. So the other 2 teams who are still on the outskirts of the city. So, of course, we have our Seekers and our Schemers group, and everything is happening. It is kind of crazy. So we cut back to everybody back at the villa. 2 days have passed at this point of time after, Thjazi Fang's execution by the Chamber of the Lord's Advisory, which of course, again, is composed of the Sundered Houses. We pick up where we left off last episode on episode 4 in the garden of the Loy estate, where we see this, coming back into his dead body as his soul returns, revived through the impossible joint magic of Murray and Bolaire, which was a lot of fun to watch last episode. And of course, as we've come to find out, the resurrection wasn't supposed to work. In fact, he was supposed to be dead. It only succeeded because another ritual elsewhere was interrupted. And this is kind of where all our magic folk are able to kind of put their brains together and kind of figure all this out. The Stone of Night Song is now removed from Octus's chest, and the group argues over who should take it. Of course, that being Bolaire and Murray and, Liz are all arguing about what to do with it. Meanwhile, Azane pulls Julian aside for a tense conversation, trying to reach him through their shared past, which we don't know a lot about, but I'm excited to see what is going down with all of that. And so I was there when Julian arrested Thjazi, and he remembers that day with painful clarity. He offers Julian to give the others a chance, and Julian may shape the official story of that day. Julian responds coldly at this, proposition, congratulating Azane on witnessing the fall of the Davino's family, just what Thjazi would have wanted. Julian is in his feels, and honestly, I kind of understand. He just witnessed his dad just get murked in front of him. The whole entire House Davinos was attacked by his family. Julian blames Octus for what happened. Everything is still fresh with Julian. And I'm very excited to see where his character arc and progression goes. And I'm excited to see what happens with this. I'm also very interested to see if and when the true nature and the true story of what really went down with Thjazi's arrest, with Azane being there, Julian being there. I want to know the tea, y'all. This is getting crazy and this is getting so good. But the two of them go back and they join the rest of the group. So, meanwhile, while this conversation is happening, with Octus alive again, technically, I mean, he is a hollowed one now, so that's very interesting to see. The Daconis definitely are going to be coming looking for answers, and Hal insists that Octus needs to flee the city. Octus shares the visions he saw while he was dead, the Daconis banners beneath a black sky, a lone orcish warrior, and the mark of the Burrow Guard. At this point, with the mention of that, Taisha and Hal fear the warrior may be their son, which I was like, ooh, we getting juicy with parental figures and their kids. This is gonna be some good stuff. Julian, who once trained the Barrow Guard, demands to go with Octus to exact his revenge against House Daconis. Octus also saw sandstone columns, a symbol of the fallen empire of Oberdemia and the homeland of House Daconis known as the Eternal Night. And while we're getting a little bit of some lore and some location, we get Lady Arnessa speaking up, and she believes the attack on House Royce was Daconis signaling that they were more than a name after the gates of, the fairy world shut, which is very interesting, which we're going to get into in a little bit when we go back to Thimble. Lady Arnessa resolves to travel east alongside Octus and asks Valus to join them. Taisha refuses to leave Octus, and he is his family now. Julian intends to protect Lady Arnessa until his moment of vengeance. So with these four, Octus, Vaisha, and Julian, along with Lady Arnessa, these five, but more importantly, the four-player characters become the Seeker's Table, and they are going to be heading east to figure out what is going on. So this is interesting to me, and I've kind of had a feeling of was going to be the group for the Seekers, but I'm happy to officially get it confirmed. So those four are going to be seeking what's going on with the Song of Nightstone, what is happening with these visions, all the things like that. So they're going on a very interesting magical journey, which is going to be very, very interesting. And I cannot wait to see what happens. While those four are kind of taking off and figuring out what to do next, we are still back at the estate with the remaining four, which is Azane, Hal, Blair, and Murray. And we hear from Azane that he recalls the Shapers' War, how the houses once chose sides for or against the gods, which remember, we are in a world where these deities have been stricken from the record books. They are no longer in existence, or so we think. I'm very interested to see how that comes into play later. But now, where we're currently at in the story, the houses are now acting independently again. And we kind of go through the different examples from everyone. How Murray moves for the I believe that is how you pronounce, forgive me. Einfonsen for the Revolutionary Guard. For the Pentevral, makes the conclusion that these houses aren't allies, but they're parallel threats, and he believes that they can be manipulated against each other. So he, Murray, Hal, and Bolaire are going to remain in Dol to sow discord among the houses, are the schemers. So there we have it, folks. We have our official 3 tables, our official 3 groups who are going to be completing different objectives, kind of like a video game, but overarching the narrative story. I'm very excited. Of course, to recap before I get into the next part, the next half of this episode, we have the Soldiers Table, which is Wick, Tyranny, Thimble, and Cadigan as our lovely wolf, which I love. The Seekers, who are heading east, is with Lady Arnessa, is Julian, Octus, Taisha, and Valus, which I'm super excited at how that dynamic is going to go. and then staying in the city and kind of probably what I'm assuming is going to be like a political thriller kind of thing and some subterfuge, which I love, is Murray, Hal, Azane, and Belair. So I'm very interested to see where all these tables go in the stories and how everything interconnects. So I am excited. I want to take a moment though, because I've saw a lot of people by the end of this particular episode complaining that, we're still wrapping up things from the overture and we should have already been moving on to the individual, arcs for each of the tables, which I understand. But to me, I'm kind of glad that we got half of the episode wrapping up everything and setting all our tables up for what they're going to do next, and then getting a little brief interaction of what the soldiers table is going to be doing, which I'm excited for. I don't mind a little bit of brevity, which I think is super important because a lot of things went down in episode 4. And I think it's really important for the fans to kind of just roll with it and enjoy it, very, if you will. But we now take a break from the episode, and when we come back, we are back with the soldiers, and everything is going to be a lot of fun. But before that, though, again, we have everything going on, and I kind of just said it. Octus gives Bolaire his signet ring. Murray reminds him, his thesis is still due. Octus reminds her he died, but agrees to share his notes anyways. They part with mutual respect. Hal asks Taisha to find their son if he's in danger. The Stone and Night song is entrusted with Valus. The Seekers secure horses and head out east. The schemers realize they all have work in 2 hours and plan to reconvene later at Hal and Bolaire's favorite art spot. Hal is still hurt that Bolaire hid the truth about Thjazi, but Bolaire reveals Thjazi forced his silence. He also explains why he allowed Valus into the city, hoping she either protect Thjazi or get him in enough trouble to escape their pact. He swears he had no hand in Thjazi's execution, which I'm going to put a pin in that because I'm just like, I don't think so, Bolaire, but we'll see. And everyone goes their separate ways as dawn rises. So again, we now have everything set up, but we cut back to the soldiers' table, which again, I'm just going to be moving forward. I'm going to be talking about every group by their table name. So the soldiers, and only if we have certain character interactions, I'm going to mention them, but the whole group names for each of the 3 tables, I'm going to call them by their titles. So here, the soldiers choose to trek through the Daphne Wood, believing that Sid took this route. They end up going to an inn called the Black Heron, and they find a man in a gibbet. I had to look it up because I didn't know what a gibbet was, and then I saw it, I was like, oh, that's fun. Not really. This man in the gibbet speaks of the Candescent Creed. Wick introduced himself as Nick Halavar, and I'm just like, hand on my forehead. I was like, oh, this is going to be a nightmare, but like, I'm here for those shenanigans. It's going to be crazy. And I love how Sam is playing Wick as this very sheltered individual now out in the real world. He's about to find out that not everything is all sunshine and roses. And at this point, Brickmetal asks whether Thimble seeks Hawthorne's Glade, a fae sanctuary for where big folk are forbidden. At least I think that's what it is. It lies 1 to 2 days north near the border. She warns of the dead who roam at night. Thimble gives her a button in exchange for guidance. Returning to the group, Thimble claims she found black fur that confirms Sid's path, all gleaned from the Naiad's clues. So Thimble, I'm very interested. There's a fae sanctuary now in this area that the soldiers' table is at. And if they choose to visit it, I'm very interested to see how that goes. Meanwhile, they finally reach the lookout tower mentioned by Abalong. A tattered banner with gnomish writings hangs outside. Water-damaged fireworks litter the ground when they approach. A glowing nail and a startled goat trigger an alarm. Out rushes Ulbid Morn, an older gnome widower. He is warm, kind, delighted that they know Avalon, and he is somebody we need to protect at all costs. So I was just like, oh Lord, he's the sweet character, and my D&D logic brain immediately goes to, it can go one of 3 ways. One, he is going to end up turning to be a serial killer or something crazy, like he's evil or twisted. He's gonna die. Or you know what? The third one option is like, he's going to be okay. Jury's still, well, at least he's not evil. At least we don't think, but option 2 and option 3 are still on the table. So I'm not doing anything that is going to make a conclusion. I'm just like, he's either going to die or he's going to be fine. We shall see what happens with all of that. But he needs to be protected at all costs, y'all. But back to the recap. Obed feeds the soldiers. He offers straw mats. And he explains his work monitoring cloud patterns in the storms of the Barodel of the storm rack, which I was like, I am very interested to learn more about this if we get more, which is going to be a lot of fun. Obed has watched the roads for years, once witnessing bandits attack a Halavar wagon when a tree collapsed across the path. Thimble sees children toys upstairs. Obed says they belong to his daughter. She asks if any toy soldiers had swords, and he promises to look because Thimble needs a weapon. He fixes the banner and lights the lantern again, making the group wonder if this sweet old widower is too great to be trusted or too lonely to suspect, which is crazy. But then the heart of this particular part of the episode comes in because during Teor's watch, he sees Obed tend to the banner and lantern again, and Teor asks what the banner reads. It reads, "Welcome home." Ulbid explains that his three daughters, Sarabel and Alandel, left 15 years ago to join the Falconers' rebellion and haven't returned. He stays here out of fear that they might come home one day and no one waiting. Teor promises to keep an out for their names and tells them their father is waiting. And on Cadigan's watch, he finds a worn doll upstairs and quietly carries it outside. He listens to the moaning dead in the forest below, and at dawn tosses the doll behind the chicken coop. I'm very interested to see what that means for Cadigan and what that could possibly be hinting to, which I'm excited for. I love a good character shrouded in mystery. Meanwhile, when he's inside, he finds Tyranny perched atop Wick like a sleep paralysis demon. And that's where we end episode 5. It was a little bit of a shorter one. And this was fun. I had a great time with this episode. I really, truly did. It definitely wrapped up and officially set the Seekers and the Schemers off on their respective, chapter 1 story arcs, if you will. And yeah, Octus is now a hollowed one, which is very interesting. Again, now we have all 3 stories beginning on the tables. Seekers, Schemers, and Soldiers, they're all divided, but they're all determined. And they're all I feel like they're gonna come back eventually, and this is gonna be crazy, and I'm excited for all of this. But the questions that I have in all of this include, is the Fae Sanctuary, who's in charge of it? What's gonna happen? Do we learn more about why the gates of Fae are closed? I'm also very interested to know what the doll meant to Cadigan, why he was so fixated and fascinated on it, and he threw it away like it was. This was definitely a bit of a slower episode. We wrapped up the overture in the first half, and then we got a little bit of the introduction of the soldiers table, getting into everything. But now we are officially set. Episode 6 is aired live this past Thursday. The VOD comes out on Monday, and you bet your bottom dollar that I will be here next Saturday to give you my review on and recap of episode 6 of Critical Role. But thank you so much for tuning into episode 5 of Crit Happens, Branching Paths. I'm super excited. I'm really enjoying the story. Again, if you're new here, I discovered campaign 1 as soon as it's concluded and watched the hypercut to give me the gist of the story. I followed campaign 2. I was on and off for 3 because of work and things like that, but now I am in 4, and now that we're in a new world, I cannot urge everyone enough that if you want to get into Critical Role, campaign 4 is a good starting point because it's a brand new world, brand new lore, and it's going to be a lot of fun. But drop comments below and let me know what you think of episode 5, Branching Paths of campaign 4 of Critical Role. What questions do you have? Now that all the tables are there, what do you think awaits all of them? What kind of things are you looking to see? Make sure to tune in next Saturday, as I will be here. Love yourself, love one another, keep those good times a-rolling, and I will see you next weekend for episode 6. But until then, gimme kiss.